Adam Hunt smirked as he spit in the face of a royal guard, convinced of his untouchable status. But in the very next moment, his world flipped upside down. He realized he had crossed a line, and the consequences came instantly. Adam Hunt woke up in a massive canopy bed, stretching and yawning without even bothering to open his eyes. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and croissants drifted in through the slightly open window. His private chef had already prepared breakfast. But food could wait. He had plans today. Lazily, he brushed aside the scattered cash on his silk sheets, remnants of last night's party, where money, as always, was thrown around like confetti. In his world, the word no didn't exist. Everything he wanted, he got. Cars? He had so many he didn't even bother remembering their models. Women? By nightfall, he wouldn't even remember their names. The world revolved around him, and that was so obvious he didn't even think about it. Yawning, he reached for his phone and scrolled through Instagram, flooded with hundreds of likes and comments from followers just as idle as he was. He was bored. The same old London, the same predictable entertainment. It was all losing its thrill. He needed something new. And then an idea struck. Damn, I haven't played with those toy soldiers at Buckingham yet. Immediately, he dialed his driver. Bring the Maybach around, we're going downtown. 15 minutes later, he was reclining in the back seat of his luxurious Mercedes Maybach S680, lazily twirling a gold lighter encrusted with diamonds between his fingers. He didn't care that it cost more than his driver's annual salary. Everything around him existed solely for his comfort. Here's the plan, he drawled, more to himself than to the driver. Gotta give my followers some entertainment. Those guards, aren't they just statues? I think they need a little waking up. The driver remained silent. He knew better than to argue. When they arrived at Buckingham Palace, Adam stepped out of the car with the lazy grace of a man who never had to rush for anything. The crowd of tourists instinctively parted for him. His appearance and demeanor screamed money. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored Gucci suit. Though he wore it so carelessly, it looked like he planned to toss it in the trash by the end of the day. Underneath was a black Balenciaga t-shirt, its neckline cut so deep it seemed inappropriate for anyone but him. On his feet, spotless white Dior sneakers, so pristine they looked like they had never touched pavement. His wrist bore a massive Patek Philippe watch, but its price mattered to him about as much as a disposable coffee cup. But the worst thing wasn't his outfit. It was his face. Tall but slightly slouched, not from exhaustion, but from the habit of never having to make an effort. Narrow, washed-out blue eyes, always squinting with a look of condescension toward everything around him. A large, slightly swollen nose, a smug smirk that was irritating in itself. He looked like a man who was absolutely convinced that here, in this square, he was the king, and everyone else was just background actors in his personal show. And then he saw them. The royal guards stood by the palace gates, tall, motionless, like statues carved from stone. Red tunics, massive bearskin hats, flawless posture. They were the embodiment of discipline and tradition. Adam smirked. All right, let's have some fun. He pulled out his phone and started a live stream. Yo guys, your king is back. Today we're gonna find out if these guys can actually move. The crowd of tourists began murmuring, but no one dared to stop him. And with that, Adam took the first step toward his biggest mistake. Adam stepped right up to the tall royal guard, his smirk growing even wider. The man before him was the very embodiment of military discipline. Strong, statuesque, his cold gaze fixed somewhere far beyond reality. His uniform was flawless, his boots polished to a mirror shine, his massive bearskin hat making him look even more imposing. The guard didn't blink, didn't move. He was like a living statue. Hey dude, are you even alive? Adam sneered, waving his hand aggressively in front of the soldier's face. The guard didn't blink. The crowd of tourists stiffened. Some had already pulled out their phones, sensing that something was about to go down. Most people knew the unspoken rule: you don't mess with the royal guards. But Adam, he loved breaking the rules. The stricter the boundary, the more fun it was to cross it. He snapped his fingers right in front of the soldier's eyes, grinning arrogantly. "Damn, bro, do they even check if you're still breathing? Or are you on power-saving mode?" Still no reaction. The crowd murmured. People were starting to whisper, some watching in awe at the fearless rich kid, others already sensing trouble brewing. But Adam was only getting warmed up. He lifted his phone, turned the camera on himself, and started streaming. "Yo, guys, your king is back. Look at this robot, haha." His live chat exploded. Some people egged him on, telling him to push further. Others begged him to leave the poor guard alone. But he didn't care. He was here for entertainment. He bumped his shoulder into the guard, staring at him expectantly. The heavy stomp of the guard's boot echoed off the stone pavement like a gunshot. The crowd gasped. The guard didn't flinch, but something in his gaze shifted. There was something cold there, something like the calm before the storm. But Adam didn't notice. He was too absorbed in himself. He spread his arms wide, turning back to his camera with exaggerated bravado. "Do you even know who you're standing in front of?" He jabbed a finger at his own chest. "I'm the son of Mark Hunt. Do you even know how much this suit costs? These watches are worth more than 5 years of your salary. And you just stand there like a damn piece of furniture." Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered angrily. Someone scoffed in disgust. Even those who had initially laughed at Adam's antics were now starting to feel uncomfortable. But Adam didn't care. He believed that money allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And then, he took it one step further. Looking the guard dead in the eyes, Adam smirked and spat. Right in front of him. The crowd erupted. And in that moment, Adam made the biggest mistake of his life. Adam stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. He wasn't just having fun, he was reveling in his power, in the fact that he could do whatever he wanted. He was a god among these commoners, and this silent guard? Just another faceless puppet for his entertainment. Tilting his head to the side, he smirked, licked his lips, and then, with practiced nonchalance, he spit. The spit arced through the air, glistening under the sunlight, before landing directly on the guard's immaculately polished uniform. The crowd gasped. A dead silence fell over the square. The sounds of the city, camera clicks, murmurs, even breathing, vanished, as if someone had pressed pause on reality. A single second stretched into eternity. People stood frozen, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. But the most terrifying thing was the guard himself. He didn't flinch. He didn't utter a word. But the air around him changed. It was as if an invisible wave of tension pulsed outward from his figure. His jaw tightened, nostrils flared slightly, and in the depths of his blue eyes, something flickered. Cold, controlled, and dangerously quiet. The veins on his hands, covered by pristine white gloves, bulged slightly. His fingers curled into fists, knuckles turning white. This was not the stillness of a statue. This was the stillness of a bomb with a lit fuse. Adam felt the shift, but he didn't understand it. He simply smirked wider, then made the single biggest mistake of his life. He reached out and, with mocking disdain, slapped the guard's shoulder. And that's when everything changed. The guard moved. In one swift, fluid motion, he stepped forward. The ground seemed to tremble beneath the weight of his boots. Adam didn't even have time to blink before a sudden force slammed into his solar plexus. The rifle butt, hard as steel, unyielding as the hand of justice. Air exploded from Adam's lungs in a strangled gasp. He tried to inhale, but he couldn't. His lungs clenched painfully, refusing to obey, his face twisted, his eyes widened, his lips parted in silent desperation, his legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed to his knees. The crowd erupted in screams. "Oh my God, he hit him! Did you get that on video? This is insane! That guy totally asked for it!" Adam gasped frantically, but his chest burned as if something inside had snapped. He coughed, his hands clawing at the air, but all that came out was a weak, wheezing sound. The world around him blurred. A piercing ringing filled his ears. The guard still loomed over him, emotionless, unshaken, coldly composed, as if he had simply executed a well-rehearsed drill. Adam wanted to scream, to say something, to protest, but his mouth wouldn't work. Everything around him began to lose focus. The only thing he could hear was his own ragged breathing. But that was just the first strike. The worst was yet to come. Adam gasped for air, trying to regain control of his body, but panic had already seized his mind. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The guard wasn't supposed to move. He wasn't supposed to attack. And he certainly wasn't supposed to be looking at him with that cold, emotionless expression, one that somehow still conveyed a single, undeniable truth. He had already lost. Instinctively, Adam crawled backward, his hands shaking, fingers desperately gripping the smooth stone pavement. He didn't fully understand it yet, but something deep inside him already knew. This day was about to become the worst of his life. But before he could turn and run, the sound of heavy, synchronized footsteps echoed through the square. From behind the massive palace gates, 2 more guards emerged. Their movements were sharp, precise, like clockwork, like trained soldiers who had perfected every step. The crowd instinctively parted, making way for them without even realizing it. The air around them shifted, electrified, as if reality itself braced for what was about to unfold. Adam's eyes darted up, his lips curling into a nervous grin. Hey! Come on, guys. Let's not take this so seriously. It was just a joke." But no one was listening. "You are under arrest for assaulting a member of the Royal Guard." The voice was steady, emotionless, delivering a statement of fact rather than a threat. Adam choked on his own breath, his throat tightening with fear. What? Are you insane? It was just a joke." But they had already grabbed him. 2 strong, gloved hands seized him, spinning him around before locking his arms behind his back. Pain shot through his shoulders as they were wrenched into place, but he was too stunned to even scream. The strength of their grip left no room for resistance. His body, so used to comfort, luxury, and indulgence, was now completely powerless against the unyielding grasp of trained soldiers. The crowd erupted. Phones shot into the air, cameras capturing the Millionaire heir's downfall in real time. People cheered, applauded, some even whistled in approval. Now that's justice. What the hell did he think was gonna happen? Not even his daddy can save him now. But Adam heard none of it. In his mind there was only static, loud, deafening, drowning out the world. He was yanked to his feet, but the arrogant, untouchable rich kid who had strutted into the square just moments ago was gone. His hair was disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled, his expensive Patek Philippe watch now dangling loosely around his wrist like a meaningless trinket. "You don't understand," Adam gasped, struggling in vain. "My father will sue all of you. You have no right. This is illegal." But the law wasn't on his side. 2 uniformed police officers stepped forward from behind the guards. "Mr. Hunt, you are being detained for assault and public misconduct. We advise you not to resist." Adam flinched, his wild eyes scanning the crowd, desperately searching for even a single sympathetic face. But all he saw were cameras, mockery, and cold indifference. The metal of the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Adam Hunt, the millionaire's son, the untouchable heir, the man who had always walked away from every situation unscathed, realized for the first time in his life that he was in real trouble. No one was coming to save him. No one would bail him out of this. He had lost. And the guard he had tried to humiliate? He was already back at his post, standing just as still, just as fearless as he had been when it all began. The next morning didn't bring Adam his usual comfort. There was no breakfast on the terrace of his mansion, where waiters silently served him coffee. No morning texts from other rich kids planning where to fly for the weekend. No feeling of power, the one he had grown so accustomed to experiencing every second of his life. Instead, he woke up on a hard metal cot, smelling of rust and sweat. The ceiling of the jail cell pressed down on him. His wrists ached from the handcuffs, red marks burned into his skin. His whole body was sore, but what hurt the most was his pride. How could this happen to him? Wasn't this supposed to end like every other mistake he had made? With a small fine, a verbal warning, and at worst, a scandalous tabloid article? But while he was trying to process what had happened, outside the prison walls, a media storm was raging. The world he knew had turned upside down. By morning, the internet had exploded. News headlines and online articles were ruthless. Millionaire's son spit on a royal guard and instantly regretted it. How a spoiled rich kid learned the lesson of a lifetime. The British Royal Guard does not tolerate disrespect. Social media spread the story at lightning speed. Videos shot by tourists racked up millions of views in just a few hours. Every second of Adam's humiliation was captured. His smug face, his disgusting smirk. The moment the rifle's butt slammed into him, his panicked gasps for air, and his pathetic collapse onto the pavement. But worst of all were the comments. Now that's karma! He thought he was untouchable. Now let him enjoy his jail cell. The guard is a legend. British traditions stand strong. Any attempt to defend himself after being released on bail was met with a tsunami of hate. But the real nightmare was yet to come. The betrayal he never expected. Adam assumed that, as always, his father would fix everything. That his expensive lawyers would pick him up, make the case disappear, and within days he'd be back in his mansion, laughing about the whole thing. But this time, things were different. Mark Hunt, his father, a billionaire and a respected businessman, not only refused to intervene but made a public statement. My son is responsible for his own actions. He must face the consequences. It was a punch to the gut. The father who had pulled him out of every mess didn't even try to help this time. Everything Adam had ever owned existed because of his family name. And now, the name Hunt didn't protect him. It condemned him, paying the price for his arrogance. The brand deals Adam once bragged about crumbled one by one. The luxury brands that had once seen him as the face of wealth now wanted nothing to do with him. Gucci officially cuts ties with Adam Hunt. Patek Philippe recalls limited edition watches associated with his name. Dior condemns entitled behavior and stands with British traditions. Everything he flaunted was being taken away from him. The world turned its back on him. His Instagram, once a showcase of his extravagant lifestyle, became a wall of shame. Instead of compliments and admiration from followers, there was an unrelenting flood of hate. Delete your account. You're a disgrace. Money doesn't give you the right to be trash. Now you're just another rich loser. Adam stared at his phone screen, his hands shaking, his heart pounding. Everything he had built, his status, his control over people, was crumbling before his eyes. He had always believed the world belonged to him. That money was a shield against consequences. But the world had just shown him otherwise. And the guard he tried to humiliate? He stood at his post, just as still, just as fearless, as he had been the moment Adam made the mistake that cost him everything. Adam Hunt disappeared. Not physically. His body still existed, but the man he believed himself to be had turned to dust. The world he once lived in was gone. A world where his last name replaced a conscience, where money solved any problem. But now even his name had become synonymous with disgrace, and his money, just worthless metal that couldn't buy back respect. You are what people remember about you. Every day he woke up with the same thought. How do you fix something that can't be undone? But the truth of life can't be erased with a delete button. People didn't remember him for who he was. They remembered him for what he did. He was no longer Hunt's heir or a future business mogul. Now he was the guy who spat in the face of a royal guard and instantly paid for it. The video of his downfall became eternal. It was everywhere. On YouTube, TikTok, talk shows, memes, articles. It became part of digital culture. A small lesson for millions that absolute privilege is an illusion, one that vanishes the moment you cross the line. Those who sow the wind will reap the storm. At first, the public just relished the moment his smug face twisted in pain from the rifle's blow. Then they laughed at the footage of him being dragged across the pavement, screaming about his father and money. After that came the courtroom videos. His lawyers, the most expensive and experienced, desperately trying to pull him out of the situation. But even they knew he was beyond saving. The judge, an older man with a cold, piercing gaze, didn't even hide his contempt as he read the verdict. Fine, £50,000. Lifetime ban from entering the UK. Complete destruction of his reputation. The law is the law, and not even money gives you the right to spit in the face of the state. This wasn't just a sentence for him. It was a death sentence for everything he once was. A person's true worth isn't measured by their wallet, but by their actions. But the worst part wasn't the sentence. The worst part was how quickly the world turned its back on him. Yesterday, he had enjoyed the way his last name opened every door. Now that same name was a curse. His father, Mark Hunt, didn't just refuse to defend him. He did it publicly. My son made a mistake, and he must face the consequences. In business circles, that meant only one thing. He's no longer useful to me. Companies he had partnered with began terminating contracts one by one. Investors withdrew their money. Luxury brands erased his face from billboards. No more multi-million-dollar deals. No more exclusive VIP events. No more respect. The world had moved on social media, where he once felt like a king, turned into a battlefield. Delete your account. You're a disgrace. Money doesn't give you the right to be a piece of trash. Now you're just another rich loser. Adam read the comments, but all he could do was watch as everything he had built crumbled before his eyes. He could delete his page. He could hide from the cameras, but you can't run from your own reputation. When your pride collapses, you are left alone. He once thought he was great. Now his name meant as much as the spit he had sent flying through the air. The world didn't listen to him. No one reached out a helping hand. The people who once flattered him now acted like they had never known him. But where was the man he had tried to humiliate? The guard. He stood at his post, just as still, just as fearless, just as he had been on the day Adam spit in his face. But in the end, it wasn't the guard who broke. It was the man who thought he could disrespect another without consequences.